Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And you all know Teddy.
And Triance.
And Triance, absolutely. We figured we would film our December reading wrap-up, which is what this is, in front of Triance because, it is December 30th as we're filming this. We have a limited amount of time we can use Triance.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're here to tell you about the books that we managed to read in the month of December. Before we get into that, we want to briefly mention one thing, and we'll do it briefly because we don't want to both cry. I had mentioned in a community post last week that there wasn't going to be a Friday Reads last week because our family needed us. And I think over the months we had kind of hinted that we had a friend who was not doing well. So now that she passed away on Sunday, yesterday as we are filming this. And now that that is over, I can tell you our friend Leon Harmon passed away, and she had a brain tumor. She was diagnosed with that in September. So we've been dealing with that for the last few months, and progressively as her situation worsened, we spent more and more time over at her house. I give a lot of credit, her best friend, Ginger, had committed to keeping Leon safe in her house because Leon didn't want to leave her house. And Ginger organized a group of people, us included, who love Leon and helped care for her and make sure that she was safe in her house. Some people, including Ginger's daughter and two people who have worked in healthcare and with people who did not even know Leon until this happened, stayed with her overnight even to make sure that she was safe in her home. And that was wonderful. And I appreciate all of the comments. I've completely fallen behind on them, but that is how our week was. Ultimately, we used to spend every Christmas Eve and Christmas with Leon, and we got to do that again. We spent Christmas Eve with her, and we spent Christmas Day with her. She was not in her best condition, but we got to spend the day with her, and that was lovely. And then Christmas Day marked the big decline that led to what happened on Sunday, yesterday. And big shout out to Teddy, because starting on Christmas Day, he really wanted to get up into the hospital bed with Leon, and we weren't letting him. And one of those women we mentioned who would stay over told us, you can let him in the bed. I think she loves dogs. I think it would help.
She was an avid dog lover, and that's how we met her, was through our dogs playing together.
Yes. And she adored Teddy. Teddy is the only dog that she allowed to come visit her while she was in decline, because he's so chill and because she loved him so much, and he adored her. Yeah. So starting on Christmas Day, after that person said, you can let him in the bed, I think Leon would actually love that. Every time we came, he would start insisting. Sometimes he'd jump up on his own, but most of the time he would just kind of step up on the hospital bed and look at us like, I want up here. So we would let him up. The good note on that is that, so on yesterday morning, Sunday, the hospice nurse had just left. I finished my coffee and put Teddy up on the bed with her. And just a couple of minutes later, we started playing an Edward Abbey audiobook because Edward Abbey was Leon's favorite author. And she passed just a couple of minutes later with Teddy on her legs and Joel and I each holding one of her hands. And Edward Abbey's going to come back into our plans for January, so remember that. But shout out to Teddy, because I really think, gave her the peace that she needed. And he stayed with her for over an hour.
Yeah, we actually left the room to call our foster son.
Yeah.
And Teddy would normally follow us, but this time he stayed by her side.
Yeah, he has mild separation anxiety, so if we both leave a room especially, he will usually follow. And he didn't, he stayed with her. And
rested his little head on her leg and just looked up at her.
And stayed.
Yeah.
What a good boy.
Yeah.
We are so lucky for Teddy. And we've been so lucky for Leon. We credit her with bringing our foster son back into our lives. She was very much adored by him as well.
She's probably been one of our best friends for the last decade. So,
and something I really thought of that's bringing this back to books a little bit, Yeah, small things like not small things like these. No, not small things like these. What's the Elvin James Mensa book?
Oh,
I can't think of anything other than small things like these right now. What is it? Small Joy?
Small Joys.
Small Joys?
Yes.
So I was thinking about that book and how you had somebody who was going through a hard time, and then Muddy would be there for him and be his friend and would tell him, "I'm your person, and we're going to get through." And Leon has been our person. And I think she always will be. So just a little tribute to her and to Teddy, who is the goodest of the good boys.
Yeah.
Before we get into what we read in December. Now, before we start to cry, obviously, I usually, this is where I would ask you, how was your reading month? I think you can all kind of guess that we had a difficult reading month because of everything going on. So how many books did you manage?
I did get through 6 books.
And I did get through 9. A lot of mine were short.
Yeah.
And a lot of mine were done in the first half of the month. If you recall, the last book that I told you I was going to be reading in December, I have not finished. So we'll talk about that at the end, because I'm going to carry it into January and into the new year. So since I had 9, do you want me to go first?
Sure.
So the first book that I finished in the month of December was The Most by Jessica Anthony. That was a really good book. Also one of the short little books. You could dunk it in your coffee, or as we have today, a cup of tea. By the way, this is Lake Moraine, where Joel and I got married.
Yeah.
And where we went to celebrate our 10th anniversary. So we have a cup of tea today in honor of that. But anyway, it's a small book. Really good, really interesting. It is about a woman in the 1950s who one day tells her husband that she's sick, so she won't be going to church. When he comes back from church, she has gotten into a red bathing suit and climbed into the pool in the apartment complex where they live, and she does not get out for 8 hours. And the book is set across that 8 hours and flashes back, obviously, to their past. It's not a first-person narration, but it does shift perspectives every chapter. One kind of focuses on the husband's point of view, one focuses on hers, and tells the story of what their relationship has been like, what their life has been like, and what has brought them to this moment. It's really interesting. I would love to explain the title of the book, because I think it's so smart and interesting, but it would be a spoiler. So all I would say is it's a short book. If you want to read it, do it. It's great historical fiction because it feels like it packs in a lot of detail without feeling so much like I did a lot of research and I'm jamming a lot of historical events into this book, which I always don't like in historical fiction. So that was my first book in December, and it was a delight. Teddy, we took Teddy for a walk before we started this, and he has wet paws. It's actually cute. Poor boy.
Little Teddy has also been sick a little bit.
He got what is most likely kennel cough.
Yeah, so we're just trying to keep him close and keep him warm and taken care of.
Yeah, and not a lot of activity, which he's not used to. But we just don't want to wear him out. He is mostly better at this point. Really? He's almost done with his antibiotic, and he hasn't had a cough suppressant since yesterday. Yeah. He's been doing great. So, but yeah, that's also our Christmas.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a lot. Thank goodness for you, and thank goodness for Teddy, because it's still
for you.
Because it still feels like a Merry Christmas, despite everything. But so, what was your first book?
My first book took me a year to read, not because it was big, because it was amazing.
Yeah.
Inland Island by Josephine Johnson. As you all know, in our wrap-ups, I read a chapter a month because the chapters in the book are January, February, March going through. But Josephine Johnson kind of has this plot of land that she lets overgrow. And for a year, she wrote what she saw in those gardens or the field each month. So each month I'm reading the book, I'm being with her as she's watching the field overgrow and what animals come and go during the seasons. Beautiful book.
Very.
I wouldn't say it is poetry, but it's poetic.
It is very poetic.
And just lovely to sit and curl up and read. So it was kind of a highlight once a month, one day a month. I would get up and read my Josephine Johnson, and December 1st, I finished it. So I really enjoyed this book.
Yeah, I did not have the although somebody did that after I read it, and I read it all in one go, which was great, and that is certainly not a wrong way to read that book. But if I had had the patience, it would have been nice to do it the way that you did.
Yeah, and when the person commented about that, it's like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for me to sit down and read that much at one time. So it was a perfect read for me.
Yeah. I feel bad, just as a quick note, because Teddy started trying to lick my beard, and I actually put stuff in my beard today, so I can't let him lick it. Which also brings me to another compliment. You know what I'm going to do. He's shaking his head because he knows what I'm going to do. How great does Joel's beard look? It's amazing. It's really just, I love it.
I've been playing with it. It's different. It's tough, but I'm enjoying it.
But all the work pays off because look at how amazing he looks. Oh, and by the way, I am wearing a Root of the Hiawatha t-shirt today in honor of Leon.
We did the Hiawatha every year.
Every year, and she loved it. And we'll keep doing it.
Yeah, 77-year-old woman just biking down the Hiawatha. The Hiawatha is mainly downhill, but she gets up there and she does it. And
if you are ever on the Idaho-Montana border and are into the outdoors, it's a beautiful trail to bike because it is an old railroad track that was used for logging, and you can go over all of the trestles over these deep little gorges between the mountains. And I don't know if gorges is the right word, but
little gorges
kind of works.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a brothel too.
Yeah, it tells you exactly where there was a brothel for the loggers. So much interesting history along the way. But anyway,
what do you have?
Me. The next book I read was The Passing Playbook by Isaac Fitzsimons, which is a YA rom-com featuring a transgender protagonist. I'm so glad I read it. It was a really interesting book because basically the protagonist of the book has switched schools at great expense of his parents because when he socially transitioned, he experienced some bullying at his previous school. So the family decided, we want you to have a good high school experience. So they transfer him to a private school, they move. And because this book has like multiple layers, his brother is autistic, so change is difficult for him. So he feels kind of bad that his family uprooted them for him almost at the expense of his brother. And they deal with that. He also, of course, meets a crush. But the idea is that he is going to pass at this new school. But he meets a boy, of course, and is interested in him. And this boy plays soccer and gets him involved in the team. But there are challenges to that because, of course, to play on the team, they want his birth certificate, which he has not. He lives in a state where he's not allowed to change his gender on his birth certificate. And, chaos ensues. So it's about the idea of passing and to stay safe and coming out and the difficulties of how you sort of get forced into being an activist just by trying to live your life. And that is really interesting. The rom-com part, in a lot of rom-coms, the two protagonists don't like each other at first and then are forced to spend time together. And the mechanism that the author uses to force them to spend time together doesn't really make sense. But that doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's a very sweet book, and I would recommend it because I think it was a very interesting read. So, what do you have?
My next one was one that you finished last month that I continued reading, The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey.
Oh, great book.
Loved it. Yeah. It's a story of a husband and wife. They're up in Alaska, and she loses her child. And they're distraught. And the relationship that you see between the couple is non-existent. They just pass.
Yeah, they don't know how to communicate with each other anymore in the wake of their grief.
So one night they went to some friend's house and had a little party, came home, and they made a snowman. And she goes, help me. And so the husband's like, okay. But he got into it, made this beautiful little child face. They got her a nice little bit of wine to put on the lips and a scarf around her and a blue jacket. Well, the next morning they get up and look at the snowman, and it's gone with feet print following, going away from it.
Yeah.
And then they all of a sudden see this child running around the forest with a blue jacket.
Yeah.
And so they befriend this child. And then I'm going to kind of let the reader get more into it because I find it fascinating. But when they have this child, their relationship almost gets friendly again. And I think it is a beautiful book with the way the writing of how the child brought the couple together, what it meant to them, and absolutely wonderful book. The ending will still kind of keep you guessing. So.
Yeah, it will. And I thought it was just so well done.
Yeah.
And it really struck a chord with me, and I believe with you as well as foster parents. But I think that's one of the fun things about literature. You bring your own emotional baggage into every book, and that was something that really stood out to us, but might not to somebody else. And it's just a beautiful book. And it plays with the mythology of the snow child. Like the story of the snow child exists in the world of the book.
Yeah.
And it does kind of follow it, but I thought it was such a beautiful book.
Beautiful writing. I love the characters. I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah. Possibly one of my favorite books of the year. That will be our next video.
You will find out next week.
You will find out. So my next book was The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. That is also an extremely short book. That's like 60 pages, including the afterword from Susanna Clarke. The premise of it is that you have a young girl named Meredith. It's set in the world of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. And Meredith is a little different. I'll let you read the afterword to let you find out what Susanna Clarke thinks about Meredith. And she loves to explore in the woods, but her family doesn't want to let her explore the woods. So her sister will sort of trick the parents. She'll say that she's taking Meredith to visit other homes and relatives and things, and then she will do the visits and she'll let Meredith explore the woods because it makes her happy. So on this particular trip into the woods, she meets a mysterious figure, and that changes the course of her life. It's beautifully written. My issue with the book is that once she meets this mysterious figure in the woods, it goes very quickly to the end. And I feel like I wanted more. Like, I think you could easily add another 50 pages to this story, and then I think it would feel more like a full story. As it is, it really feels like the setup to a story, and then not enough of a resolution for me. You kind of jump from point A to point B too quickly. But Susanna Clarke is a beautiful writer, and Piranesi is a book of hers that I need to catch up to in 2025.
Yeah, I thought you had that one. You wanted to read it?
Yeah, I do. So that was my next one. What do you have?
My next one was something we did together on a little road trip.
Oh.
We read the fourth in the series of Heartbridge, Montana, and it was Deck the Fire Halls by N.R. Walker.
Yes.
So N.R. Walker has built this series of books focusing around Heartbridge, Montana, where every Christmas a stranger will come into town and the Christmas Cupid will shoot his arrow and make him fall in love with somebody. And so all four books are based on something like that.
I think it's actually the fifth. I think it's the fifth.
Is it?
Yeah, because you have two Australians first, then you have the guy who stayed at the inn,
right,
and then you have the cop, and now the firefighter.
So it is the fifth. Okay.
It's the fifth.
My bad.
No, I mean it's hard to keep track.
Yeah. No. We have really enjoyed the first four.
Yeah.
And the fifth one, I enjoyed the story, but the book was focused much more on sex.
Yeah.
And it was nothing but.
Yeah.
And I didn't enjoy it. And
yeah.
I did give this one 2 stars, where I really liked the other because they kind of give you a sense of community, a family.
Yeah.
When you're in a small town and you're gay, they kind of build a circle of friends, which I found just really, truly lovely and inspiring.
Yeah.
But this one talked about the friends, but they weren't that much around it, and it just got to be too much. But it was still a fun book.
Yeah, I think the best part of the book is that it does sort of lean into that sense of community. Somebody had commented to say that they have trouble keeping track. I can see that. because sometimes in the beginning I will think, okay, which character works at the restaurant? But then I can quickly catch up. You actually have a cheat sheet.
I have a cheat sheet. I made a little. I have a spreadsheet for that.
Joel loves a spreadsheet.
Yes.
So
if you want to read the series, I have a spreadsheet for you.
Yeah.
But it's a really sweet series. So pure cinnamon buns through and through.
Yeah. This one was just much heavier on the spice.
Yeah.
To the point where you almost don't. I think at one point we were driving and you turned it off for a second and said, "Did these people even like each other, or do they just like sexing each other?"
Yeah, you don't know if they honestly do love each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the sex is just good, but
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
And
it was funny because we started it driving to Helena, which is about a 2-hour trip.
2 hours.
And then on the way home from Helena, we listened to more, and that whole return trip was like sex scene after sex scene after sex scene.
Yeah.
So just like 2 hours of like nonstop erotica, and we were both kind of like, okay. Not what we came here for. So,
but the series is good. So.
Yeah, it is a good series overall. So,
what do you have?
I have something that you also ended up reading in the month of December, which is this book, I Might Be in Trouble by Daniel Aleman. It's tempting to call it mystery thriller-ish, but there isn't really a mystery, and there are kind of thriller-ish aspects to the book, but I wouldn't want you to go in thinking that that's kind of what you're going to get. And I don't want to use the term literary thriller because I hate doing that, because it makes it feel like you're saying like this is the version of thriller that you should take seriously. But I think that's the best language we have to describe what this book is, because it's much more about the protagonist, who is sort of intentionally conflated with the author of the book, Daniel Aleman. In some ways, like there are, I think, at least 3 times where someone mistakes David's name and calls him Daniel.
Yeah.
And so the ways it plays with that is kind of interesting. But the premise of the book is that David hooks up with a guy that he meets through an app, and they have this great night going around to bars and, of course, having a lot of sex. And they end up back at David's apartment, and David wakes up in the morning, and this guy that he has hooked up with is dead in the bed next to him. I expected it to open with that.
Yeah.
And it actually takes about 50 pages to get there, which I actually appreciated, because it lets you get to know David and what he is going through, and helps introduce you to his agent, Stacy, who is an important character in the book. So you actually get time to know him before it gets to the chaos that happens after he wakes up.
And you also get to meet the character who dies. You get to meet him too. Yeah. So I kind of liked him. And then that all falls apart. So.
Yeah, there are lots of twists with the guy he hooks up with, and the less I say about that, the better, in case this is something you want to read.
I found it fun. If you want a fluffy kind of suspenseful book, because every chapter kind of leads you to the next, or a cliffhanger on each chapter, and I thought it was good. I did not really care for the ending.
I didn't either, and I had finished it first, and I kind of warned you. And then when you were enjoying it, I kept just smiling and nodding. And he's like, "You don't want to say anything?" I was like, "No."
But I think I enjoyed the book more than you did.
I did enjoy it. I think I was a little more soured by the ending, and it's so hard to say, because I can't talk about what was disappointing about the ending without spoiling. So I think I was a little more like, the ending was really disappointing than you were. Like, I think you were disappointed, but I think that hit me a little harder than it did you. But I still really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it. So,
I would too. So.
It is a fun book. You do have to check your brain at the door a little bit, because some of the chaos that ensues after he wakes up with this dead body is kind of like, I don't believe a real person would do this.
No.
But if you go along for the ride, it is a lot of fun.
Yeah. You have to go along for the ride.
Yes.
And just go with it.
It's gay chaos. Who doesn't love gay chaos? So
Any gay I know.
yeah. So
that
there you go.
was my book too. So
Oh, that was your next one?
Yeah. So if you want to go into yours.
Okay, so where am I on my list? The next one I did was a graphic novel, Ready or Not by Andy Peretta. It's a young adult graphic novel, and ordinarily I think the young adult kind of transcends age. Like, you can look back and read a young adult book or a middle grade book or a children's book, and you can find something to relate to. This book, I think, has a bit of an age limit, at least it did for me, because the premise is that you have this group of friends who are getting ready to go to college. It's their last summer before they all go to different colleges, and one of them is staying home, and she's kind of struggling, feeling that everybody's moving on and she's not, but they're careening into adulthood. So she comes up with the idea that they should play this game of dares that they have played and which helped them bond over the years as friends, where each of them will write down a couple of different dares onto a piece of paper. They'll put it into a cup, and taking turns, you pick a dare, and if you don't complete the dare, you're eliminated from the game. And it keeps going until somebody wins. And she's kind of desperately making it encourage her friends do this and encouraging them to keep doing it because she's worried about losing them. And I just kind of did therapy on myself and realized I think part of why I couldn't relate to the book is that these dares are not. There are things like two characters race through Grand Central Station and like run through crowds and almost knock people down and things. And
you don't like mischievous.
I do not like that. And another one, it's just they interfere in the lives of people around them and basically cause trouble with these dares. And I am not on board with that. And Joel knows that. You follow some people on, like a couple on social media who just constantly play pranks on each other. And I was like, this is the worst thing I could possibly imagine.
I even think it's the worst thing possible. So
yeah. So it's like, even when I was a kid, I hated Curious George because I would get offended. And I would say, the man in the yellow hat told him not. Like, my mother would be reading to me and I would interrupt her and say, the man in the yellow hat told him not to do that. And I'd get mad. So I think there's an aspect of that to this as well. But I also think if you are in high school or early in your years of college, you can relate to this sense of what is my life going to be. But when you've gotten past that, it's harder to empathize because you read the story and you think all of your problems are very self-made and you don't actually know what life is or what it's going to be. So just deal with it. And it's hard not to get out of that mindset. So anyway, what did you have next?
My next one, and thank you to Danny, that bookish bear, The Nightmare Before Christmas by Sarah Rosh. It was different, and it was really hard for me to get into it. So it's described as a book that has a cross with Red, White, and Royal Blue, where you have the president's son and the prince falling in love. So how they tie this into it is you have the King of Christmas, Santa Claus, the Prince of Christmas, you have the King of Easter and the Princess of Easter, and the royalties of Halloween and the Prince of Halloween. So every holiday has a hierarchy of people. So it kind of starts off with the Prince of Christmas is just a royal goofball, and he tries to do things and they backfire and they're horrible. Well, he meets the Prince of Halloween and they kind of fall in love and they have this like romantic, but all the turmoil going on from the Christmas King is just craziness. And it's a fun book. If you kind of put the royalty of the holidays to the background, and I still do have a little bit of a not understanding what the King of Christmas is trying to ruin the other holidays to make them more special, and it just got a bit much. But the love story between the two princes is really kind of cute and how they kind of resolve everything. But fun read as a Christmas book, and the Christmas village and everything is really fun and beautiful. It got to be a lot, but it was still a fun read.
Yeah. I don't know if I would catch up to it now that we're getting past the holiday season, but
there's better Christmas books out there.
And I might talk to you about some of those that I might want to catch up to later. All right, so my next one was actually Deck the Fire Halls by N.R. Walker, which we already talked about because we did it together. So I'm going to jump ahead to the book after that, which was The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer. I actually ended up doing this because I wanted an audio. I didn't have any inspiration, so I just went onto Libby, which is a library app that our Montana library is involved in. And I was using the Queer Liberation Library, and I was going through to see what books were available now, and this one was there. And I have wanted to read it since it came out and won the Giller Prize, so this was my chance to do it. You have Baxter, who is, go figure, a sleeping car porter in 1929, I think, in Canada. And he has been trying to save up money to go to dentistry school. That is his dream. And he is on the verge of losing his job, but he's also on the verge of having enough money to go to dentistry school. So he's doing this cross-country trip, again, the country being Canada. And by the end of the trip, he figures he will either have been fired or he will have enough money to go to dentistry school. And it's about all of the prejudices he faces as a black man and all of the prejudice he faces on top of that as a gay man, and how he has to hide himself. And it has very interesting interplay about how the passengers, who are white, rely on him in order to get through this journey, but also don't really want to have anything to do with him because he's black and he has to hide the fact that he's gay. Very fascinating book, very well written. As it progresses and Baxter gets sleepier because he doesn't really have opportunities to sleep on this train journey, it gets a little dreamier and he starts to lose a little bit of the thread between what is actually happening and what is a dream, which is interesting. And it is a very fascinating book. Also a very short book. I don't think it's much over 200 pages. So great book. I'm glad I finally got around to reading it.
I had read it a couple of months ago and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating book. And the character of Baxter is very memorable, I think.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Are you done or do you have...
Nope, I have one more.
Okay.
I have The Christmas Killer. Obviously, I had a theme this year for the holidays. So I did The Christmas Killer, and it's in a series, and I don't know if I'm going to continue, but it's a police detective who gets a box on his porch, and in the box it has a gift in it, so he unwraps the gift, and it's a dead partridge.
Not in a pear tree, though.
But not in a pear tree.
Yeah.
But the card inside is a card, and they kept saying the card representing the 12 days of Christmas, and that's a lot of stuff on a card, so I couldn't figure out what it is. I mean, 12 drummers drumming and all that going down. I had a hard time figuring what this card looked like, but everybody has these cards in this little village in England, and he says there will be one death for every day of Christmas.
Were the deaths themed to the song?
They were not.
Okay, that's disappointing to me.
I kept waiting for that, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I don't know how you would exactly pull that off, but that's kind of the writer's job when they said this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. It makes everybody a suspect, but nobody is. There's a lot of little side stories in there. So I really enjoyed the book. When it came down to revealing who the killer is, I wasn't sure I was buying it, but it was a good book, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So I did a little bit of traveling, so I was listening to it. So I had fun with it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, fun is all. Honestly, I think fun was really all we could tolerate in December at a certain point. So, speaking of which, my next book was The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. We did see Wicked in theaters, by the way.
We did.
It was good.
Yeah.
obviously, Wicked is inspired by The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, did he live in Kansas?
I don't
Or
know.
is it The Wizard of Oz just popular in Kansas because it's set in
yeah.
Kansas?
Yeah, because it has tornadoes. Who knows?
I'm asking him because he was born in Kansas. So as if
Don't hold it against me.
Yeah, as if he's an authority on all things Kansas. So,
Which, by the way, not to take away from that, but I think I may read Wicked by Mark McGuire.
Gregory Maguire.
Gregory Maguire.
It's a good name.
But I like Mark McGuire too.
He does. I get it.
By Gregory McGuire. And it was funny because Danny, that bookish bear, posted, how did you get from this book to this movie? So I want to read it again so I can see, because I know
It's
the
darker.
book is much darker. So.
Yeah, it is. A lot
tell
darker.
us about the Christmas.
So, but all of that is important because if you know The Wizard of Oz, basically L. Frank Baum writes a version of the Santa Claus myth that sounds like it fits within the Wizard of Oz universe. There are wood nymphs and knooks and rills and mean aguas that decide they want to destroy Santa Claus's mission to bring hope and joy to children once that gets going. And basically in this version of the tale, it was written in 1902, and one thing I had to keep reminding myself is in 1902 we didn't really have set lore or mythology for Santa Claus. So things like when it comes to it's deer, not reindeer, and they have different names. So things like that, like knowing Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, and Blitzen. I hope I did that correctly.
And the most important one of all?
Rudolph.
Okay.
Great anime. We watched all of the Christmas things as well, not to keep sidetracking. But anyway, and we have a great Halloween costume idea for next year, just as a tease. But anyway, so some of the mythology is not what you would expect, but I honestly think in 1902 when it was published, a lot of that mythology hadn't been set into the pop cultural icons that we know them as. So this Santa Claus is abandoned as a baby outside of a magical forest where wood nymphs live. One of the wood nymphs asks the master woodsman, who is sort of the Zeus figure in this world. She asks him if she can adopt the baby. She does. So he grows up in this magical land knowing all of these magical people and is very happy and well-adjusted. And one day the master woodsman takes him out to see the world because he's never seen another human. And he sees that a lot of humans are having a tough time. They're stressed, they're suffering. And he decides he wants to take the joy that the wood nymphs and the rest of the magical creatures have given to him in life and bring joy to the humans, especially the children, because he sees them as innocent. And then it builds up his story of how he became Santa Claus from there. It's a fun book, especially a Christmas book. It definitely feels like a Wizard of Oz book, if that is something that appeals to you. Like, it was fun. I don't know that I would make it like an annual thing. I don't know that I liked it that much, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm glad that I read that. And then you said you don't have anything left,
Nope,
right?
it's all you.
So my final book that I actually finished in the month of December, final book that I finished in all of 2024, is a collection of 3 short stories. A Christmas Memory by Truman Capote. My library had this modern library edition that is not anywhere near as pretty as the one that is available in stores now. So this includes the stories A Christmas Memory, One Christmas, and The Thanksgiving Visitor. Did I do that right? Yes, I did. And I really loved this. I think A Christmas Memory and The Thanksgiving Visitor might be among my all-time favorite short stories. They're really wonderful. You had picked this up right before things started to decline with Leon.
Right. And I read the first short story and I really liked it.
Yes.
And I'm just into the second one. I don't know when it's returned back to the library.
I think I have until January 8th.
Okay.
So you have another week.
I have a lot on my plate to read, so we'll get into that in January. Here.
Yeah, and see. And it's not that the second story is bad. It's just that I think the 2 bookending stories in the collection really stood out to me. So even One Christmas is a great short story. So I would say even if you're somebody who is not into short stories, these are good ones. And this is something that I would like to make an annual tradition. Yeah. And Joel, kind man that he is with the amazing handsome beard, I found an edition of A Christmas Memory from 1989 that somebody told me about in the comments, and I'm sorry I don't remember who, but they said that there's an illustrated version, and I found it on eBay in good condition for $20, and Joel let me order it. So it doesn't have the other two stories, so I'll probably be getting this from the library again.
Oh, it doesn't?
Next year. That edition only has
the first one?
A Christmas Memory.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll have to get this back from the library next year, because that is something that I liked enough to make it like a Christmas tradition. Just beautiful.
And I'm about halfway through it, and I'm really enjoying it. But I'll see if I can get it done before the 6th. So
let's talk about what we're carrying into the new year. So you will be carrying A Christmas Memory, possibly.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. We're going to go on vibes and see. So the book that you know I was reading was A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. I had been on a hold list for the audio for months, and it finally became available. So I had intended to finish this before the end of the year, but, life happened, as it does. I realized I only have 2 days in the audio because I had not even thought about it in days, understandably. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the hold. I unlocked the audio on, it's not Scribd anymore, it's Everand. And I might listen to this on audio in January. Part of me thinks this would be a good book to read in print, because I did listen to about 4 or 5%. And I really loved the beginning of this book. The writing is just gorgeous. So I'm carrying this into 2025, and I will likely do it on audio, but depending on what I'm reading in print, I might pick up the book. What you don't know is that when I finished A Christmas Memory, I was trying to think about what I wanted to read. And actually, I have multiple editions of this book, and the one I'm reading is not the prettiest, but it's the one I'm holding in my hand. I have not read The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger in a very long time.
Yes, you have.
No, not in a long time. I used to read it every year at Christmas because that's when the book is set. It was one of those interesting things. If you have followed for a long time, I read it every year because I so identified with Holden Caulfield that I kind of thought that it just perfectly fit my worldview. One year, I think I was 20 or 21 at that point. And so I had been reading this every year for about 5 years at that point, possibly 6. One year I read it and was like, wow, Holden does not have a clue. And I had this existential crisis about, did I grow up or did I sell out? And I ultimately decided I grew up. And I am only 53 pages into the book, because that's how far I got before things started to get bad with Leon. So I would still like to finish this. So I'm carrying that into 2025. Do you have anything that you're carrying in? I know you had kind of started this one.
I kind of started Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey.
Yes.
We listened to it with Leon. This was Leon's, one of her absolute favorite books, and is her favorite author.
I think that actually is her favorite book.
I think it is, because we talked about it in the later days, and I told her I am going to read it. So I have it on audio. I started the first chapter. It is absolutely gorgeous writing. Yeah. I see why she likes it. You have to be a person who really is in touch with the outdoors. And she was. And she was. And most of her stories of her youth is camping and hiking through Moab, Arches National Park, down in that area.
She loved those spots.
Loved it. But Edward Abbey is what she named her dog, Moabby. So
yeah, she knew the full name is Moabby because she loved Moab, and then Abbey, Abbey, for Edward
Abbey.
Yeah.
So I started it. I probably will restart it so I can focus on it.
Yeah.
Because I was playing it mainly for her to listen to.
Yeah, and for that reason, I only heard bits and pieces of it while we were with Leon, and I could tell that the writing was beautiful and that I think I'm going to love it. But I definitely need to start at the beginning.
I know I'm going to love it. So.
Yeah, and I had been thinking that I wanted to read Leon's copy. I'll include them in my book haul for January, but in her last 2 weeks, Leon gave me all of her Edward Abbey books. And she had 2 copies of Desert Solitaire, one first edition hardcover and this paperback. And I had thought, I really want to read Leon's copy, but we were looking at it last night and I'm worried that I would damage this paperback. So we got the audiobook on Libro, so we don't have to worry about when it will be due back.
Right.
So I will probably end up doing this on audio as well. So we are going to put it out to you because when we read The Snow Child, we invited a lot of people to also read The Snow Child. So Joel and I are both going to read Desert Solitaire in the month of January. If you would like to join in, please feel free. It's a very informal sort of reading group thing because basically I'll talk about it in videos, you'll talk about it when you come back for a January wrap-up, and we can discuss it in the comments with you, but there isn't like a forum to leave comments or anything like that. So if you would like to join in reading Desert Solitaire by Edward Abbey in honor of our friend Leon, and also because this is supposed to be a really great book, feel free to do so in the month of January. And also, I'm going to throw it out there, if you want to do something for Leon, she was a big advocate for Planned Parenthood, so you can also donate to Planned Parenthood in her name, and that would be a blessing for her.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you're thinking of reading in January, or are you going to go on vibes? We're going on vibes.
Total vibes.
Total vibes. So that is what we did in December, a little preview for what we will do in January. And we just want to say Happy New Year to everybody. I didn't tell you this, so I'm going to make an announcement that's even going to surprise you. I looked at my laptop this morning to gather up my list of December titles. This channel has crossed 2 million views over Christmas.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you, because you're part of this. And congratulations to Sleeping Teddy, who is also part of that. And thank you, because that doesn't happen without all of you. And we really appreciate all of the support through difficult times, losing Guinness, losing Jamie, now losing Leon. I love this community, and I look forward to more of that in 2025.
Yeah.
So
we will be back for our top 10 books of the year.
yeah. Our top 10, our almost best,
Almost.
our best nonfiction, which you have a lot more nonfiction from
And
last
I
year.
think I have some
than I
good
did.
nonfictions.
You do. I'm jealous. So we'll also talk a little bit about worst. I only really have 2, but we'll talk about them.
I'll have to look.
I just
I know
sprung that
I
on
know
you.
I have a worst in there. So.
Yeah. And so we'll do best, almost best, best nonfiction, and we'll think about worst.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for all of that. And Happy New Year and happy reading.
Happy New Year. And happy baking.
And happy baking, always.